So as we know, we all get old. I'm getting a little older, and it's like hard for me to grab things now that are high, and it's like, I got a creaky back. So I got one of these like old man grabbers where you could grab things that are high. So I'm gonna go for my iced coffee. And it's a little different. Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. Well, a few big names have come off the free agent board, and we'll kind of examine what that means for Cody Bellinger as the Yankees continue to pursue to retain the outfielder. Of course, other teams as well there. And plus, as we know right now, winter meetings are going on. Brian Cashman and both Aaron Boone are down there, and had to stop by the MLB Network booth there, have some words, regarding Bellinger, Dominguez, and some other players there. So if you kind of missed it, I'll kind of give you a little recap of what they had to say on those specific plays and the free agent markets so far, as well as some trades that could possibly be out there. And of course, fun time of the year we always do is the Hall of Fame talk. Obviously Don Mattingly's not going to get in, didn't get in, but there will be a new Hall of Fame inductee for 2026, and that's Jeff Kent via the Veterans Committee. I don't really think it's a great pick there, but nevertheless we'll go over the numbers, we'll make the argument. Again, I don't think it's a gross pick, but again, before I kind of list the names of people that were eligible, and I just didn't feel Jeff Kent had enough there. But again, we'll go over the numbers, so we'll do that. It's a lot of fun for you, and of course this will leave it off there. This will leave you something happy there. Of course, Jason Dominguez, as we reported here last time, is in winter ball, so we got a little bit of feedback how he's doing down there. Don't really have any stats there, but I'll actually make an argument that if the Yankees don't sign Cody Bellinger, I think having him to start the season in left field isn't the worst thing there. So got a good episode for you. Got a little Brian Cashman, a little Aaron Boone, got a Jeff Kent there, and again, if you want to rub some salt in the wounds of Met fans there, Edwin Diaz bolting from the Mets there, so we'll have a good laugh at that as well there. So a lot of good stuff for you, but before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the audio podcast version of the show. So wherever you listen to the show, wherever it's your favorite podcast, look for Section 420 Talkin Yankees, the podcast, subscribe to it as well. And if you're watching right now, whether it's on YouTube or on television, go to YouTube as well. I know you figure, well, I can just remember it. No, you're not going to remember, you're going to forget. So you want to get notified when new episodes go up. So go to YouTube, search for Section 420 Talkin Yankees, subscribe there as well. So we'll get into some of the big name free agents that can come off board, namely Kyle Schwarber, as well as Edwin Diaz, again, bolting from the Mets and going to the Dodgers. What a shocker there. But nevertheless, in terms of what's going on here in Yankee land, as we know, the winter meeting is going on, and both Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone are down there in Orlando, going around a little bit, and they've been talking to the press about several different issues. And in case you didn't catch it, both of them did stop by the MLB Network booth there, and we asked a couple of questions, mainly because of Cody Bellinger. Now, according to Aaron Boone, he himself hasn't personally got involved with what they call the recruiting process yet. He kind of figured, and he kind of respects, Bellinger's situation right now. I mean, this is the time where he's supposed to get his big payday for his career there, so kind of understands it there. But at least he seemed optimistic that he would come back. Same thing with Brian Cashman. But even though Cashman mentioned as well that this is not really moving at the fastest pace right now, but he said he is in constant contact with Scott Boras about Bellinger and other players there. But again, you can see this might just something to come down because, again, this free agent market overall isn't that great there. So, if you're someone like a Kyle Tucker, if someone like a Schwarber who did get signed eventually, or Bellinger, you're probably going to wait the market out a little bit because, again, there's not too many other options out there. So you're probably going to get a pretty good deal there. So you want to make sure you don't just act too quickly. So we can see this Bellinger kind of dragging out a little bit. And since kind of Bellinger and Tucker are kind of in the same boat a little bit there, as soon as one shoe drops on one of them, that's when the other one's going to sign. So one of those players is probably going to set the market for the other one. It's just who's going to blink first there, and kind of what you're hearing overall, that there might actually be more interest in actually Bellinger versus Tucker, because Tucker overall might cost a bit more. And there's some questions about his durability, getting hurt like that, and also his desire for the game. If you remember, when the Yankees signed Jacoby Ellsbury a couple seasons ago, obviously he got hurt like that, and there was always the questions like, what was he jaking it? He didn't seem like he was always in a rush to get back there, and they ended up just voiding his contract at the end. They just couldn't play anymore. So you don't want to get something like an Ellsbury there who seems like he really didn't have a strong passion for the game to want to come back and want to play there, and it's kind of, oh well, I'm hurt, I guess I'll just sit it out there. So supposedly there was those kind of innuendo there about Kyle Tucker there. So again, this is innuendo there. So again, probably once one of those guys go down, that's when the other one goes down. Kind of similar to like 2019, remember the offseason with both Manny Machado and Bryce Harper there. It was kind of like those are the two free agency prizes. Now, I'm not saying Bellinger and Tucker are those two guys. Those two guys were special there. But it just seemed seem like until one of them went down, that's when the other one would get signed. So that's probably the situation. But getting back to the Yankees and some other players that some questions about Aaron Boone was asked about Jason Dominguez. Now, he did report down to winter ball. So far at this moment now, he's had 10 games under his belt. They haven't given me specifics on how he's doing, what he's doing, but at least according to Aaron Boone, he has improved a lot, at least with his defense there on the left field. But he still mentioned before, though, there's still also a long way to go there. So I just take that as a marginal improvement there. But again, probably still going to you're probably going to hold your breath a little bit with him there on the left field if you want to read between the lines. And as for this, talk about Jason Dominguez, should he give up being a switch hitter? Obviously, last season, if you look at the numbers there, the splits, and we did talk about it here. I mean, he was a much better left-handed hitter versus a right-handed hitter, but also, again, a part of that, more often than not, this is the way it is, you're more likely to face a right-handed hitter than a left-handed pitcher. There's more right-handed pitchers out there, but nevertheless, his splits were gross to the point where there's been some consideration, should he give up being a switch hitter and just be a full-time 100% left-handed bat? Well, both Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone said no. They still would want him to be a switch hitter, so they're actually having him still hit from both sides of the plate in winter ball, which I think that's the good move to make. And don't want to beat it to death, but just go back to Yankee history with switch hitters, whether it's Mickey Mantle, Bernie Williams, Jorge Posada, Nick Swisher, Chili Davis, Mark Teixeira. Again, if you get a power hitting switch hitter in the middle of your lineup there, just as a weapon there, I just think it's a good move to make. So I think the Yankees should just continue to play that string. Even if he struggles one side of the plate, that keep giving him bats as a switch hitter. So I think that is the right move. And as for Spencer Jones, Aaron Boone was asked about him. And he kind of mentioned that, he obviously don't want to award the guy a job like that, but he said he took care of his business in the minors, and now he's knocking on the door for the majors there. So if I had to interpret that, unless he has a real disastrous spring training, which I don't think would happen, look to him most likely get a good chance of making the major league squad there, which, I think that's a good move to make for the Yankees, just to get him up here. I think he's been ready for a while. Now, you look, supposedly with him, his thing, he does strike out a lot, but a lot of players strike out a lot there. But I think just get him here as soon as possible, put him in the mix there. And I think it takes the pressure off the Yankees, which I'll discuss a little bit later, where they're not forced to sign Cody Bellinger. Yeah, Bellinger is better than Dominguez and Spencer Jones at this point. But let's just say for some reason Bellinger ends up in the hands of someone else there. I'm okay with both, Dominguez and Spencer Jones kind of duking it out there, see if one of those guys could get the outfield spot there. But as for Cody Bellinger, as mentioned before there, again, both Cashman and Boone seem optimistic they can sign him there. But again, they just haven't got to the point, again, in terms of Boone specifically, of being able to make those recruiting calls, made the hard calls there, as they're kind of letting it play out a little bit. And, Boone had to do some, recruiting too. If you remember back a couple of years ago, the Yankees were looking to sign Stroman. There was a little beef, history between Cashman and Stroman, which wasn't the greatest. Boone did get there, make some calls as well, to kind of get involved in the process. So at a certain point, Boone will probably get more in the process in retaining Bellinger. And as for Cashman, kind of was asked about trades and it's like that. And just kind of based on the Reddit when he said that, I mean, he talked about, how at that time, Jesus Montero, who unfortunately passed away, with an accident a month or two ago, back in 2012, making the trade for Jesus Montero to get Pineda in there. So using a chip like that to get someone like a Pineda, Cashman was kind of asked about that, but he said right now, just in terms of the market and in terms of what they're offering and what people want from the Yankees, it doesn't seem like the Yankees are really going to make any big move via the trade there. So again, if you're someone who expects the Yankees to do some things by leaps and bounds for next season, I don't really see that at this point there. Again, there's probably the number of focus is whether they're going to retain Bellinger or not. This seems to be the case. And the comment I think Cash made that I think people are reading a little too much there regarding both Luke Weaver and Devin Williams. He kind of said, well, we lost Devin Williams and Luke Weaver to free agency. Well, losing them in terms that meant they're not on the team anymore. Now, of course, we know the Mets signed Devin Williams. Luke Weaver flown out there. But I think people interpreted that's the door is shut on Luke Weaver. I don't mean that the door is shut on Luke Weaver. It just means, look, they're not on the team right now because they're free agents. So, duh. Yeah. So I don't think that necessarily means that the free agents and the Yankees have no consideration in signing Luke Weaver. I think they might consider it. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't know. You don't really hear any talk in that direction there. But I just don't think that means that totally 100% Weaver can't come back. I mean, he could come back possibly. We just got to see what the market is for him. And again, supposedly he wants to maybe convert himself back to a starter where that's where you get the big bucks via what Clay Holmes does there. So kind of seems where's Weaver heads at. What does he want to be? Does he want to be a closer still? Does he want to be a setup man? Or does he want to make that leap to be a starter, which I don't think the Yankees are going to look to sign him as a starter. If they do want to sign him, they want to sign him back in that bullpen. But As we know, 2025 wasn't good for him, especially towards the end there, where he just completely lost, completely shattered there. And the whole season, those problems, supposedly he was tipping his pitches, and he was getting into the bullpen coach and like that because he wouldn't change his ways. And he was still getting rocked. And again, he did not have a good season. And this towards the end, it was a complete shell of him for himself. Even when he said he had his no confidence going out there. So I don't know if the Yankees even want that guy back. But again, maybe if the market isn't great for him, and again, and if he decides not to be a starter, wants to stay as a reliever, maybe the Yankees get him at a good price, which I wouldn't be totally against bringing him back. I totally did not want Devin Williams back, but I'm okay at least opening door with Weaver coming back from there. So that's all. See what the meetings, and usually deals. I mean, the Schwarber one did happen, but again, this might be a situation where if there is a signing of Bellinger, it might be well after the winter meetings end, and maybe even well after Christmas there. Just because the market right now is just a little bit slow. And super agent Scott Boras, who players love and fans hate, also giving a few pressers down there in Orlando, and kind of on the topic of Cody Bellinger, since his client, mentioning right now, in addition to the Yankees being in on Bellinger, supposedly the Mets, the Dodgers, the Blue Jays, the Giants, the Reds, the Angels, and at least at the time, the Phillies. Now, I don't see the Phillies being in on Bellinger anymore. They just signed Kyle Schwarber, a 5-year deal for $150 million. I mean, it's possibly, the Phillies do have some money there, but I just don't think they're going to really get Schwarber and Bellinger there. So at that point, I would say that, if you want to start, taking some teams off the board, I would definitely take the Phillies off the board to get making that move. And in terms of a contract, more or less, I think that's what you might be looking at for Bellinger. Probably maybe a 6th year. I think Schwarber's just a little bit older at 32, so you get away, at a 5-year deal. I don't know if the Yankees are going to get Bellinger on a 5-year deal, but he's probably looking more at a 6 or 7-year deal. I don't think the Yankees will go 7 years. So if I had to guess in terms of years, you're probably looking at 6 years more or less. This is going to be in terms of probably the size of the contract there. If I had to take it, again, I don't think the Yankees want to go longer than 6 years. But if we look at some of the other teams, the Angels. Okay, they need something. I mean, it's just terrible out there. They got really nothing to play for, and Mike Trout's just unfortunately wasting his whole career there. I just don't see they're paying all that money for Trout, and he doesn't even play, and you're going to bring this guy Bellinger. It just doesn't seem a good fit. I mean, it's nice weather out there. I mean, maybe Bellinger, but that's not a winning situation. It's going to be a while before the Angels are going to be winning again. And I just don't think Bellinger wants to go in a rebuilding situation there. So I would take the Angels off the board. The Reds, you kidding me? I mean, the Reds have any money? I mean, I can't see that as any realistic. And they've been making some incremental steps last season. They almost got into the playoffs as well. So look, they have a young nucleus there, some things going there. But I don't think they're at the point yet where they're going to land someone like Bellinger, because that team's still about a year or two away from maybe being an okay, a legit team there. So I don't see the Reds there as realistic. Giants maybe just because it sounds weird. I mean, it's a big market team in a way, but they kind of seem they don't spend a lot of money, but they do once in a while will bring in a big haul. That could be a possibility. I wouldn't be shocked. I just don't see it happening. And plus, I don't know if Bellinger wants to play out there and face the Dodgers. I mean, Dodgers, especially now they got the Diaz. They just come fresh off the World Series champ. So why'd you want to play there against the Dodgers when you're going to lose every year? So I just don't think that makes much sense for him. Blue Jays, that's a possibility. Again, we always see the Blue Jays. A lot of times they have trouble landing a big free agent there. I think they have the money. I think they would, and I think something Bellinger might consider. Just, that I wouldn't be shocked if that happens there. So at least, and again, they're a good team. Again, they just made the World Series there. So, would that happen? That's a good possibility. Mets. Now that could the fact that the Mets now lose out on Diaz. They're not sure what's going to go on Pete Alonso. Now, if they lose Pete Alonso, which possibly that could be a possibility there, then maybe they're going to have to spend money. They're going to have to get somebody there, and of course the fans will be going nuts. So in that case, I could see the Mets as a contender, and of course the Yankees are in on them. So if I had to pick 3 teams that are probably in on Cody Bellinger, probably Mets, Yankees, and Blue Jays realistically. I still feel all things being equal, Yankees probably do retain him there if everyone stays reasonable on both sides. But again, those are the listed teams. Of course, Scott Boras is going to say all the teams are in this just so everyone packs like that. But I only see really 3 teams that are realistically involved with him. Now, in terms of, I mentioned before, Boras did confirm and Cashman confirmed on his side. Both Cashman and Boras have been in frequent communication, so that's good there. But supposedly Boras hasn't heard from Hal yet. So, I guess Hal comes in for the big finish, the big close there. So, we haven't gotten to that point yet. And if you remember back, the negotiating judge's contract, it really was Hal, when he was out there visiting the Pope, making that last-minute phone call to lock in Judge there. So I guess if things are kind of at a breaking point there, Hal will eventually step in there if he wants to close the deal there. So Boras said so far they hasn't heard from Hal, so I guess it's not at that point yet. But again, right now it's just going to be between Bellinger and Tucker. I just don't see the Yankees going for Tucker. Again, he's probably going to, at 28 years old, he's going to probably command a longer contract. I don't think the Yankees are going to be in on him there, so Bellinger makes the most sense. But if that doesn't work out there, the Yankees do have a couple options in the, with some of the young guys, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Not really Yankee related, but anytime you can throw salt in the wound of Mets fans, why not? Why not kick them while down? And that's, of course, Edwin Diaz bolting from the Mets and now signing with the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers don't have enough great players. They just don't have enough championships. They haven't just freshly won a World Series. Now they add Diaz there. So kind of surprising there. Obviously, he opted out of his deal. Now, Diaz had 2 years left on the deal for the Mets worth $38 million. Now, again, when he signed his deal with the Mets a couple of seasons ago, it was a 5-year deal, but he could opt out after the third year. Opted out, you understand. Obviously, he put up some great numbers. Probably could rank him as the best closer in baseball, so he has an opportunity to redo his contract, get some more money. Why not? Again, at 32 years old there, so getting a big boost. Now, the kind of interesting part, according to Joel Sherman of the New York Post, that the Mets offer was 3 years at $66 million. The Dodgers signed him for 3 years, $69 million. So basically the Dodgers offered Diaz $1 million per year, which you kind of see that's kind of penny pinching, and you figure with Stevie Cohen, Mr. Big Bucks, blowing away pretty much everyone else, and kind of include the Yankees more or less, in signing Juan Soto. He couldn't cough up maybe $4 million just to hold on to Diaz there. So kind of weird situation. Now, David Stearns of Met GM kind of mentioned that the Devin Williams signed from a week ago. They signed him to a 3-year deal for $51 million. Did play a role in that where they didn't feel as pressured or feel forced to have to re-sign Diaz. But all that being said, you figure that if you're going to lose Diaz, again, best closer in the game right now, probably bar none there, and replace him with Devin Williams, who maybe was the best closer like 2 or 3 seasons ago. You can't go off what he did last season and say, oh, well, don't worry, we can fix that with Devin Williams. Again, Devin Williams struggled mightily with the Yankees, and it wasn't until they kind of gave him a bit of a lesser, strenuous role and kind of lesser leverage role that he did a little bit better in the second half of the season there. But if you think that Devin Williams, the way he is going to replace Diaz there, you're sadly mistaken. So the whole thing's really bizarre. And if you're Diaz yourself, I don't know, kind of where's the loyalty there a little bit? You want to be part of this nucleus. I know, the Mets 2 seasons ago took the Dodgers and when at least, the NL championship series there. So, yeah, Dodgers kind of smoked the Mets a little bit. But at least, that core group kind of all got there together. And you figure, we want to keep this thing going a little bit. For Diaz to bolt to the Mets to go to that, kind of a weird move from Diaz. So, did he even really love it here? Did he want to be here? I know getting here, obviously he came via the trade. It was almost a throw-in when they brought Cano in here from Seattle there. And he struggled mightily. But, kind of fixed himself and turned it around there and became, again, a really good closer. Probably maybe the best closer in the game right now, I can say that. But you think maybe he'd want to stay with the Mets a little bit, and just a bolt for this another $3 million there. So kind of a little bit weak on his part, and kind of weak on the Mets part there. Again, I thought Mr. Cohen, the whole idea is that we're not going to lose players. We're going to sign who we want there. We're not going to, we're going to be the big brother in town. And you let Diaz walk this for another $3 million there. You can't step in and give him like $4 million or $5 million just to keep him over here. So kind of weird on Diaz, kind of weird on David Stern, and kind of weird on Steve Cohen there, just to let this guy go. So the Mets, who didn't even make the playoffs last season, again, an 83-win team, now somehow you think you're going to get better by not retaining Diaz. So good luck. The Met starting rotation was in shambles last season, except for the second half, and the bullpen is completely burnt out. And okay, you add Devin Williams, but that's it, and then you lose Diaz. So big loss for the Mets there. So again, if you're a Yankee fan, you want to glee a little bit, you want to laugh at them, I guess you can there. But again, kind of weird on all sides. Now, supposedly they said maybe the Yankees might have been on Diaz. Turns out at the end of the day, the Yankees weren't really on Diaz. It was really Mets, Dodgers, and the other third team was, again, those Blue Jays, who seem like they have a lot of money to throw it around, but no one really wants to go there, or they just never really close it that much there. But it looks like the Yankees weren't on Diaz. No, I think they were. If you want to base on Hal's comments that he wants to at least get under, $300 million payroll. Again, that's an idealism. Now, I don't think that means whether they're going to sign Bellinger, and I think as he's saying that in mind with them retaining Bellinger. I just don't think the Yankees are going to add more on top of Bellinger. And something like Diaz, obviously, is going to cost $67 million. I didn't think the Yankees were seriously going to be on him. Look, I would have been great to have him, but I didn't think Diaz to the Yankees was going to be realistic. And if you're a Yankee fan, figure, all right, if you want to go to the Dodgers, it's going to be that hard. You'd be lucky to get to the World Series and face the Dodgers. So, get to there first there. But for him to at least go there and not to deal with him, not have him cross town, not having Boston there, I guess if any place for Diaz to go there for the Yankees, not terrible. And switching gears, we'll get into a little Hall of Fame talk, and that's, of course, Jeff Kent, voted in by the 2026 Veterans Committee. Again, this is kind of the group of like former players and former umpires and some owners there. It's like a 16-person committee there who look at players who maybe couldn't get into the traditional way through the Baseball Writers Association. They kind of burnt out their 10 or 15-year run of eligibility there, and it's an opportunity to look back at some players that might have been overlooked and get them into the Hall of Fame. And I guess through the class of players available, they voted in Jeff Kent, which I didn't really, again, I didn't predict that. I kind of mentioned the players before there. I'm not going to say it's gross there, but again, I'm not in favor of the selection overall there, and we'll kind of get into the numbers. If you want to look back at Jeff Kent, great player, great hitter, dangerous hitter. Again, the only caveat with him is that he put up power numbers as a second baseman, so he was kind of unusual that way. I think if he had these numbers as an outfielder, probably he would not be considered a Hall of Famer. That's the only thing I would kind of give him. I'm not going to say it's totally terrible there, but again, I was a little surprised by this pick there. I didn't think it was a good one there. Now, and again, Yankee fans and everyone was holding on hope for Don Manley to finally get it. Don Manley was not going to get it, unfortunately. It's never going to happen, unfortunately. At least Jeff Kent, you can make more of a case there, but we'll go over the numbers overall. 17-year career. Don Manley only played 14, but again, just to show the difference there. So a 290 career batting average. That's pretty good. And again, in this modern era where, again, you don't really have too many 300 hitters anymore. All right, give him a little bit of that. 2,461 hits. So, about 500 hits shy of the magic 3,000 there. Yeah, however you want to rank that. 377 career home runs, which for a second baseman is pretty impressive. Again, originally came up, he was kind of played a little third base as well, but pretty much once he solidified himself of who he was, primarily a second baseman. Again, that's a lot of home runs for a second baseman, but again, far from the magical 500 there, of course. 1,518 RBIs. Lifetime on-base percentage of 356. It's okay. It's pretty good there. Slugging percentage of career 500. That's pretty good there. And on-base plus slugging lifetime of 855. You would say a 900 or more is considered elite. He's about 50 points under that, 855. Still pretty darn good there. And MVP in 2000. If you at least have one MVP award there, okay, at least that's at least something there. And that was in 2000. 5-time All-Star, 4-time Silver Slugger, but no Gold Gloves there. So do you consider a guy like that a great Hall of Famer? I don't. I just see it as a very good hitter, a very dangerous hitter there. But again, just look at everything. I just don't consider that Hall of Fame. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's like Harold Baines is probably the worst Hall of Fame pick of all time with the Veterans Committee. I don't say Jeff Kent's terrible there, but I just never considered him great. And and if you want to say well, Jeff Kent, he probably played in the steroid era and all that stuff there. Again, there's never been any allegations or innuendo regarding Jeff Kent. When he originally came up with the Blue Jays, he was traded to the Mets there and had a couple good seasons with the Mets where he showed some pop. But then he was kind of around it a little bit. He was with the Cleveland Indians at the time there, eventually landing with the Giants, and that's when he just magically turned it on. And his first season there in 97 with the Giants, he hits 29 home runs and has 121 RBI. So here's a guy who's like kind of weird, like no one ever really wanted to hold on to him much. Yeah, he did have some pop with the Mets, but the Mets are always willing to let him go as well. He goes to Cleveland. They do nothing with him. He comes to the Giants, plays with Barry Bonds, and now magically, he has a great season of hitting 29 home runs and 121 RBIs. So again, I'm not going to say anything regarding Jeff Kent like that, but this is kind of weird. And if you're going to use PEDs as a reason to like not include plays or include plays, take someone like Roger Clemens, for example, who's been waiting. Now I know there's been allegations with Clemens, but he never exactly failed a test or anything. This has been some hearsay and innuendo, mainly from the Mitchell report. But again, if you're going to say that if PEDs have nothing to do with this, I don't know why you're not putting Roger Clemens, who just look at the resume, it just blows everything away. I'm not going to get into all the numbers there. So didn't like this at all there, but nevertheless, and also got to consider with Jeff Kent there, he played 6 seasons with hitting behind Barry Bonds. So look, it's not Lou Gehrig's fault that he hit behind Babe Ruth there. But again, if Jeff Kent was not hitting behind Barry Bonds, would he have given so many good pitches to hit there and stuff like that? Probably not. So it helps hitting in front of Barry Bonds as well. So you have to kind of consider that there. So well, the thing being said, again, I don't love the pick, but if you want to, if you go look up the list of second basemen, look at some of the numbers there. Jeff Kent does beat some players in some areas there. So he's in the conversation. I'm not saying it's gross there, but I don't like it. But let's just look at another second baseman who I think is a definite Hall of Famer there. Now the numbers are similar, but he was more effective during the time he played in. That's Ryan Sandberg. Hall of Fame as well. Now, a career batting average of 285. But again, Ryan Sandberg was kind of just a little bit before that whole steroid era there, so that a little bit more impressive. 238 home runs, so about 100 home runs less than Jeff Kent. But again, he played it during that era of the 80s, really, where second baseman and middle infielder, you only expected them to play defense. You didn't expect much offense from a second baseman, so it made him more unique at that time. Slugging just a little bit under Jeff Kent at 452 versus 500. But look how he was at his time versus other players. MVP as well, a 10-time All-Star. So he was an All-Star 10 times. Jeff Kent only 5-time. 9 Gold Gloves. 9 Gold Gloves. Jeff Kent had 0 Gold Gloves. And 7-time Silver Slugger Award. Jeff Kent only 5. So Ryne Sandberg maybe doesn't have the power numbers as many home runs. But again, you look at the guy, 10-time All-Star, 9-time Gold Glover, and 7-time Silver Slugger, and he hit 300 in 5 seasons or more. Jeff Kent only did that 3 times. So Ryne Sandberg, that's the guy who's a definite Hall of Fame, and again, he got it in the traditional way there. Jeff Kent, I guess, again, you could say he has power numbers, a great power-hitting second baseman, again, but I never saw him as a great player there. So not a good pick by the veteran committee, not the worst, but not the best there. But again, if you're a Yankee fan, there was no way Don Mattingly was going to get in, and he never will, unfortunately. And closing out in left field, we'll go back to Jason Dominguez, who we spoke about a little bit early in the episode, and kind of a little bit of a rant I did on the audio podcast version of the show, which is why you should be a subscriber. Kind of mentioned that if the Yankees don't resign Bellinger, I think, starting this season, mainly with Dominguez there in left field, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Now, let's just go, take a step back, look at the season. First of all, the guy's only 22 years old, and he's going to be 23 next season. I meant the idea that is because he's like 22, 23, he's not Mickey Mantle right now, that he's a bust and the Yankees should get rid of him, they should trade him. Again, there's a lot of some talk that if the Yankees do sign Bellinger now, Dominguez perhaps becomes a trading chip out there, which I can see as a possibility. But also, I think it'll be a terrible mistake for the Yankees to give up on the guy too soon. Again, only 22 years old. I mean, remember back in the day when a player would come, usually a player wouldn't come, it was like seasoned more, about 26, 27 years old. So the guy still has some time to grow and room to grow. So I just don't think the Yankees should give up on him that easily. Now, look, the numbers he put up in 2025 weren't great. He played 123 games, a batting average of 257. Okay, it's not terrible, not gross. It's not like Volpe hitting 208 or something like that. 10 home runs. That was a little surprising. I thought we saw a little bit more power from him. But you got to also remember too, coming off Tommy John surgery, from 2023, which took out the rest of his 2023 and a good chunk of 2024 there. So I mean, the guy, even though he was playing last season, it takes a little while to get your strength back a little bit. So I would, expect a little bit more power for next season. 47 RBIs, and again, he was able to steal some bases. Now look, we know that the defense in left field was not the greatest there. You could assume he can be a little bit better. You got to get the guy was a center field. You throw him out in left field. He's going to take a bit of a learning curve there. So I think the Yankees can. I think he will get better there. I think they should have a little bit more patience with him. But there's no reason why the Yankees, Dominguez can't have a sort of a Ben Rice type of season next season, hit maybe 20-something home runs, improve a little bit better there. So, and then the fact that you're not paying the guy anything, I mean, making relative peanuts. I mean, not really a free agent. It's almost 2031 there. So you have a guy not making that much money under control for a few years. So, once you try to maximize that and try to get the best out of that versus maybe having to fork over $180 million or $200 million to Cody Bellinger there. So, so I just think the fact that the Yankees aren't really forced to sign Bellinger. And if you want to look at a couple of stats there, again, I'm not making the case that Dominguez is better than Bellinger, but I just want to look at what Dominguez did last season. His on-base percentage was .331. Well, Bellinger was only 3 points higher at 334, so, it's not like he was drastically better. Now, obviously, where Bellinger is drastically better, of course, on base at plus slugging at 813, and he was about 100 point higher. Dominguez only at 719, but you got to consider the fact that Bellinger got more playing time, and yes, he's a slightly better player, so he's going to have more base hits, more walks, more home runs and doubles. So yeah, that's going to increase his on base plus slugging. But overall, but still, it's not like grossly different there. So if you want to plug in Dominguez there, and hope and have some faith that he develops a little bit better and is a better offensive player there, I just think it gives the Yankees a little flexibility where they're not forced to sign Cody Bellinger. And I'm okay starting the season with Dominguez there. And look, if he falls flat in the face, he stinks. You can always make a move by the trade deadline, or in fact, maybe Spencer Jones comes to spring training and just lights it up there. Start the season with him in left field, and again, same thing. He's a center field. He's going to have some growing pains out there. But again, I like the option of perhaps going to the young guys versus paying a boatload for Bellinger.